For those that are waiting on Zoom, we are still waiting for 2 more members to come to be in attendance. Once they come, we will undo our microphones and we will start the meeting. Thank you.
I'd like to call the September 14th, 2023 regular meeting of the City of Webster Groves Board of Adjustment to order. Tom, would you please read the roll?
Debbie Sahlberg.
Here.
John Burse.
Here.
Randy Sprague.
Here.
Melissa Wilson.
Here.
And Tom Walsh is here.
I would note that that we were expecting Mr. Papillo, but Mel is a sworn member of the board, and so she is going to, you know, if Mr. Papillo shows up, then Mel will go back and sit in the audience, and if not,
here he is.
Okay. Right.
You got
Right.
You got to buy.
All right. So
attendance rescinded.
Yes.
You got to pass.
And then this is BJ Papillo. In addition to the board, we have Mara Perry, the Director of Planning and Development, and Peter Buntrigger, our acting city attorney. We have 4 petitions tonight. We will take each one in order as listed on the agenda. And for each one, the city will present their case. Then we will ask the applicant and any individuals in favor to speak. Then we'll offer the opportunity for anyone who's opposed to the application to speak. Then we will close the public session and open for board discussion. And we will vote on your and board discussion and decision. These proceedings are recorded, so we ask you to speak into the microphone and speak clearly and one at a time. Like I said, we will vote on each application tonight, and approval will take 4 out of the 5 board members. Please try not to be redundant or repetitive in your comments. Tom, would you please read the powers relative to variances?
When by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property as of September 20th, 1956, or by reason of exceptional topographical conditions or other extraordinary or exceptional situation or condition of a specific piece of property, which condition is not generally prevalent in the neighborhood, the strict application of the area regulations of this zoning code would result in a peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to or exceptional and undue hardship upon the owner of such property. The board is hereby empowered to authorize upon an appeal related to such property a variation from such strict application so as to relieve such difficulties or hardships.
Thank you. Would you please read the first docket into the record?
Docket 2394, a petition submitted by John Fogelslang for an application for variance from sections 53.073B.5 of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 6.8 feet from the minimum required 24.8 front yard northeast setback in order to construct an addition to the existing house. The property is located at 800 Edgar Road within the A4 7,500 square foot residential district.
Thank you. Mr. Buntrigger, would you like to present the exhibits for 2394?
Yes, but prior to evidence, I would note for the record, we would like to include exhibits 1 through 9 for the purposes of this hearing.
Thank you.
And we would call Mara Perry to testify.
Mara, could you please raise your right hand? You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yep.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Mara Perry.
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development.
What are your duties in that position?
To administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 800 Edgar Road?
Yes, I am.
In which zoning district is that located?
It's located in the A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
And that's within the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, it is.
What is the applicant's request in docket 2394?
The applicant's requesting a variance of 6.8 feet from the minimum required 24.8 foot front yard northeast setback in order to construct a 2-story addition to the existing house. The proposed addition will be located 18 feet from the northeast front property line.
And which municipal code sections apply to this request?
The code section's 53.073B5. It's for the front yard setback. A dwelling that existed as of September 20th, 1956 may be enlarged provided the proposed addition does not extend into any required front yard setback a distance greater than the original dwelling structure.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Yes. So the existing house was built in 1954. You can see on the survey here, the house is highlighted in yellow. This particular property has frontage on Edgar Road, as well as frontage on Chestnut Hill Lane. And then as it rotates around, Chestnut Hill Lane actually has a secondary, another frontage. So it has 3 front yards. I'm going to go into a little bit more information about this specific piece of property. This property does have the subdivision plat had recorded front yard setbacks. Those front yard setbacks that were recorded were 30 feet from all 3 of those frontages. The 30-foot setback is highlighted in green. The original carport of the house already encroached upon the front setback line as recorded in the plat. There's a north encroachment of 0.8 feet and a northeast encroachment of 5.2 feet. Those of you who've been on the board for a while will note that in October of 2019, this came before the board. It was docket number 2325. At that time, a variance was approved for an addition to the house that was going to be a single-story garage addition that was going to extend into the front yard setback to go to the same request that you have before you this evening, which is the 18 feet northeast front setback. The area that was approved is that little area in red, and the setback that was approved was the red line of the setback. As the construction began on the project expanded considerably to what was originally approved. The original approval, you'll see the elevations here, was to do the attached garage. It was a single story and some additional work on the existing house. The project has now changed to a second story on the existing house, an additional almost half to second story onto the garage. And the additional improvements, the second story on the existing house meets the already approved setbacks per the plat of the house. But by adding additional height to the garage, the variance you approved was for a single story garage, not a 2-story garage. In order to move forward, they also had to first go to the board or to the architecture review board and ask for a floor area ratio additional percentage, because the overall size of the house was going to be larger than allowed on the lot. They have obtained the additional floor area ratio. Now they're coming before you to ask for the variance. And then should they obtain that, they're going to go back to architecture review board.
Can I stop you right there just to make the record clear? The architectural board, they approved.
All they approved was an amount of square footage that could be expanded upon. Doesn't mean that that they're giving in any way, shape, or form the approval for this second story on the garage. All they approved was that it could go to a larger square footage. That square footage doesn't necessarily get to go on top of the garage. It can go somewhere else on the lot meeting the code.
So I just want to clearly understand that we're not getting into board versus board.
No, you're not. They're 2 separate items. Both of them need to be approved. But in order to even ask for the variance, we needed to first determine whether ARB was going to be comfortable with an increased floor area ratio. Again, that increased floor area ratio can go multiple places on that lot and on that second story of the existing house. If they're going to expand upon with the addition, it needs the variance to go the distance up on the already approved 1-story garage.
So let me ask you this. What is the difference between the old variance and the new one that they're asking?
So the old variance and the new variance has the exact same setback request. However, when you approve, you're approving based on a request that they are going to do, and you're making that determination based on it was a 1-story garage.
Right.
If he is no longer building a 1-story garage, it needs to come back for anything else that might not meet the setback. So the setback is being met for the 1-story. The new proposed 2nd story above the garage and square footage above the garage does not meet the existing setback for the property.
Thank you.
Yes.
And let me make sure I understand. This is living space above the 2nd story of the garage. It's not part of the garage. It's just
Correct.
additional living space.
It's living space that connects to the new 2nd story of the house that is being proposed.
But the reason we're here is because of the extra or the 2nd story that's going on the garage that's already been approved.
Correct. I'm going to, there's a couple more slides.
Sure.
So you'll see here, the applicant has the exhibit that identifies the 2nd story square footage. They're calling it, he calls it a bonus room in the floor plan. So you'll see that it is a partial 2nd floor habitable space on top of the already approved garage. So there is still the similar portion, the little red area is the same area that is being requested that doesn't meet the setback. That was my last slide, unless there's other questions.
Is anyone?
The only other question I had is, we're not talking about anything crazy. It's just a regular 2nd floor addition.
So if you go back into your packets, he did provide elevations. You can see here this lower, sorry, I'm going to go back. And I apologize. The ones, it was hard to get it to come up. The line work's very light on the drawings. So once it got scanned, once your drawings probably are more visible, but you can see above the garage, there's the 2 garage doors. That before only looked like this. It had just a standard roof. Now it is being extended and is going to have a full space above that is habitable.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mara? Who's here tonight in favor of docket 2394?
So I'm going to promote him to panelist to be able to join the meeting. So if you want to wait just a moment.
Well, in our time, I'll say you have an excellent shirt.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
How's
Yes.
it going, everybody?
Could you please state your name, and then you'll need to be sworn in?
Yes, I'm John Fugelsang.
Thank you. Could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead and explain your variance request.
So Mara summed it up pretty well. Basically, it disappeared. The rafter space, so the roof structure essentially had originally been a truss roof design, and with raising the height of the house over the main portion of the house facing Edgar Road, the existing roof line over the garage just didn't add up well in the elevation drawings. So the main reason
Why is that?
for just because I had a taller structure and then leaving the same pitch of the roof and the same height of the roof, it just looked silly with the little garage wing coming out the I guess the east side of the house. So originally in the design, when I raised the profile of the house over the main part of the house, I just wanted the ridge line to be relatively similar for the space over the garage. And there really was no way to do that without inherently adding some space in the second floor, which, you know, was an attic, but it would have head height now for livable space. And Mara and I.
So let me stop you there
Yes,
for a
sir.
second. So the livable space, what sort of harm can you articulate that you need the zoning variance for
Well,
that?
I think the question is the hardship. What's the hardship, BJ?
Right.
So, and I think it's, you know, it appears to me that part of the hardship is what we granted the initial variance on, the fact that this lot has 3 front yards.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
that
very
would-
unique situation.
I was asking.
Yeah. Right,
So
right.
if he wants to articulate.
Right.
Yes, and that's something that I put in the write-up that was similar to my original request that was approved. Also, if you look in the write-up, you know, this was just a natural progression of the change in the design, and you know, this was the really the only way forward at this point in time with raising the rafters over the garage area.
Okay, now what does this put in connection with the rest of the neighborhood?
Well, so you notice on the, I believe the bottom view there is the north elevation. So the house, the lot does raise quite substantially from west to east. So even though the house would get taller on that east, I guess the east elevation, there is,
Let me key you in
sort
on
of
what I'm
built.
really asking. What
It
I'm
is
really asking
what?
is, does it change the character of the neighborhood so that you have one house that
No,
that towers over the others?
no,
It
it's
changes
still
the
going to
property
be,
values
it's going to
of the
be
others.
small. It's going to be a lower elevation than Chestnut Hill Lane, or number 2 Chestnut Hill Lane, which is the neighbor on the circle, the next house up the hill.
Well, and I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm familiar with this neighborhood because this is near where I live, and there's a number of 2-story houses. I mean, a lot of them were built as 1-story initially, but there've been some modifications
Sure.
of houses without variances in that general area. I mean, in that little Chestnut
Right.
Hill
Yeah,
circle.
yeah.
And I think too, if you drive by it, the house is really on a hill,
Mhm.
goes down toward Edgar Road.
Right.
And it's sort of in a way stands by itself as you enter the side street there. So I wouldn't see it impacting the neighborhood.
Okay, but we're correct. Do you, Mr. Fugelsang, I'm sorry, we interrupted you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have any more to add tonight?
No, I don't believe so.
Does anyone have any other board members have any other questions for the petitioner?
No.
No.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of docket 2394? Seeing none, is there anyone in opposition to docket 2394? Seeing none, hearing none. If so, we will close the public session and move to board discussion. Could I have could I have a motion to approve docket 2394 so we can start discussion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Does anyone want to?
Can I just, before we start, can I remind you, and while it may not have been you, this board has approved a variance with the same footprint as what is being presented now. Right. So you should consider that as precedent. And if something has changed, we need to be clear on our vote and why.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I would motion that we approve the variance request by virtue of precedent as well as the unusual circumstances of this parcel, which have remained unchanged since we last approved it.
Right.
anyone else want to make?
Oh, and I think the hardship is not changed.
Right.
It's the shape of the lot. It's the positioning of the house on this lot. It is a difficult thing to deal with 3 front yards.
Right.
And I think the first approval was correct, and I would support this one.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I guess my biggest issue is the character of the neighborhood, and if it's going to hurt property values for people that just have the one story, which seems prevalent in that neighborhood. Yeah, and that's something I think we should discuss if that's an issue. I understand the three front yards. I don't think this is at all bad. But I think we should at least put something on the record as to what the height variant. No, it's not even a variant for the height.
There's
It's
no
just,
variance.
Well,
we're
and
reapproving essentially.
and he's certainly entitled to a two-story house. There's no question about that. And if you know, it's likely that if his original proposal had 2 stories above the garage, that would have been, you know, we would have approved, this board would have approved that.
And frankly, the height of the house isn't part of the variance,
Right.
right?
No,
The variance
it's
is only
not.
the setback. The reason it's in front of you again is because the height has changed.
Right.
But that in of itself isn't part of this decision.
Right.
About this.
And if I don't know that I was in, maybe I was. I don't know if I was in on that first one. I mean, I get the 3 front yards is weird. It's that causes a hardship in my mind. And if we're staying within the same variance and he just wants to take a height differential, I'm okay with that. I just like a discussion on the record as to we discussed.
Okay. Does anyone else want to make a comment about the you know, whether a 2-story house at this location? Well, Tom, you already said that you don't believe.
Well, did you go by the property?
I have not. I've been
Okay,
to Edgar many a
you
time.
turn off Edgar Road and you go up a hill
Mm.
and the house is to your right. And so the house and then the street splits right and left. And so the houses are behind where this house is. This house is going to have a little more height on a hill. I don't see it impacting a neighborhood. I think it will add to the neighborhood.
Well,
I-
do we have
just-
anybody
to
that
just add to the-
supported
To
or
just add to the conversation, I think this is a pretty modest height increase.
Yeah.
It's
Right,
really a
right.
story and a half. So, you know, BJ, I'm not bothered by it at all. And
No,
No, it is
there's-
just a
there's
discussion.
conversation.
And the only other question I would have is, and I haven't seen it, but do we have anybody that
We did not receive any comments from any neighbors, and neighbors
No
were notified,
neighbors.
correct? Okay. All right.
all right,
Any
well,
other-
with that, I offer a motion to.
No, we have a
well,
motion.
have
We have a motion on the floor. Okay.
Call
Are we
the
ready to call the
Call.
question?
Call the question.
All in favor of docket 2394, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Tom, would you please poll the board?
Randy Sprague,
Aye.
John Burse,
Aye.
Debbie Sahlberg,
Aye.
BJ Papello,
Aye.
and Tom Walsh votes aye.
Your variance has been approved. Please see city staff during regular business hours for your next step. Tom, would you please read the next docket into the record?
I will. It's docket number 2395, a petition submitted by Randy and Rebecca Serino for an application for variance from section 53.043B.5 of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 9 feet from the minimum required 45-foot front yard east setback in order to construct a 1-story addition to the existing house. The proposed addition will be located 36 feet from the east front property line. Property is located at 406 West Jackson Avenue within the A1 20,000 square foot resident district.
Thank you. Mr. Bentrigger?
Before we begin, I would like to note there are exhibits 1 through 9 that we would like to be included in the record for the purposes of this hearing.
Thank you very much.
And then we would call Mara Perry to testify.
Who's previously sworn.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Mara Perry.
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 406 West Jackson Avenue?
Yes, I am.
Is that within city limits?
Yes, it is.
In which zoning district is it located?
It's in the A1 20,000 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request in docket number 2395?
The applicant's requesting a variance of 9 feet from the minimum required 45-foot front yard east setback in order to construct a 1-story addition to the existing house. The proposed addition will be located 36 feet from the east front property line.
Which municipal code sections apply to this request?
So the code section in this case is 53.043B5. A dwelling that existed as of September 20th, 1956 may be enlarged provided the proposed addition does not extend into any required front yard setback a distance greater than the original dwelling structure.
Can you describe the existing condition of the property?
Yes. So this particular piece of property, which is located at the corner of West Jackson and South Rock Hill Road, has a house that was built in 1921. The house also has kind of an unusual detached structure that's sitting in the front yard along South Rock Hill Road. And because of the orientation of the lot, the rear yard is to the opposite frontage of South Rock Hill Road. The property also is sloped up. You can see on the survey, there are a number of retaining walls leading up to the front of the house. The front yard setbacks, because it's a corner property, there are 2 front yard setbacks. We're going to focus on the front yard setback from South Rock Hill Road, but I have identified both the front setbacks with a green line along here. The front yard setback for South Rock Hill is based on the back corner of the house that's closest to South Rock Hill, which is 45 feet from the South Rock Hill property line.
Mark, can I ask you, when was this house built?
1921.
Thank you.
So in this slide, I'm going to try to identify what they're proposing to do, where the existing required setback is, and then what the proposed setback. You can see that they, in blue is the addition that's being proposed. I did highlight in blue both, there's 2 different elements to the addition. There's a 1-story garage portion. In addition, there's also a front porch. The front porch is in compliance with the setbacks and the zoning code because our code does allow front porches up to 10 feet in front. But because the garage itself needing a depth to go back to actually fit a car into it does need to extend a small portion out in front of the required maximum front yard setback. So you'll see here the green line, which identifies they are able to do an addition. It just can't go out far enough to be able to physically fit a vehicle. And they're trying to minimize how large it is. They do already have an existing garage that's also quite small in terms of depth. And so they're putting this piece on that would then extend a small portion into that front yard setback. So the requested front yard setback is at 36 feet. You can see here in the floor plans, on the right is the existing floor plan of the house. On the left is the proposed. I did focus on the blue to be very clear that that is the only portion that is being requested. And the area of the variance is for the section in blue that is between the green line and the red line. So they are proposing a garage that then has to connect to the existing house, or would connect to the existing house. You'll see just to the right of that blue box, that's the existing garage. That's, as you can see, is not extremely deep, but that's the one that they do have already attached to the house.
Can I ask you, Mara, what is the hardship or what we're looking for?
So the configuration of the lot, there's a combination of different things. So normally we would talk about whether you could do a detached garage structure in the rear yard. The rear yard in this case is this area here. When we get to the photographs, there are some photographs. This property slopes up considerably and has a series of retaining walls that block the ability to get into the rear yard for anything. And also the side yard setback, there's no ability to get here. In addition, from Rock Hill going down, there's also a slope down into the lot. So you slope down into the lot from Rock Hill, you slope up to the lot from West Jackson, and then it's also been built all the way up to the back portion of the lot. So the side yard setback has already been met. So it's kind of like they're boxed in on multiple sides, and they can't do another accessory structure. We talked through options of doing an accessory structure in different formats. This one required the least amount of variances. Some of the other options they were looking at required 2 or 3 variances. So this really kind of minimized as best as possible how to accomplish some additional work within the existing footprint and adding a small amount.
Am I correct on the previous slide? The blue area was the one that was in. Now you have the one where you're talking about the little blue spot, not that blue spot.
This
that
one.
one. Yeah. And the blue area there is the size is necessary to accommodate a vehicle.
It's the new garage and then connecting to the existing house.
I understand. And
Yes.
and it's designed to accommodate a standard vehicle.
Correct.
Great.
So I highlighted in blue the area that's being proposed. There is you can see slightly in yellow just to the left of it is the proposed open porch, which does not need a variance. But just notes that it's on there and identified in your packets.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Also, I was going to do just really quickly the different elevations because they did provide both existing and proposed. So you can see the differentiation. In here, there's the existing east setback of the house that's visible from Rock Hill Road. And then you'll see in blue the area of the elevation. I didn't highlight the roof, but it is going to be a single story area. And then this is also the elevation from existing and proposed for the elevation from West Jackson Road. And again, you can kind of see, I'm going to highlight here. This is the portion. The green is where the setback is, and the red is the variance where they are proposing to go further out. And there are photos. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there were photos in the packet. I would have put them on the slides, but
Are there any letters in support?
not in this case.
And no letters in opposition. No letters at all.
No letters in either.
Okay.
Has the city considered whether there are any rain implications or water implications?
They would address that during their site plan review, but the amount of square footage that they're adding is small enough that they should be able to address all water concerns within the existing lot.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark.
Anyone else have any questions for Mara?
No.
Who's here tonight for docket 2395?
I am promoting the property owner to panelist,
Okay.
so she's able to speak.
Can you hear us?
Oh, she's on now.
Okay. Rebecca, you're muted.
She looks muted. Yeah.
Yeah, and Rebecca's here, but I'm her husband, Randy Soriano.
Okay. Randy,
Sounds good.
would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Well, I'm far from a real estate person on this stuff, but basically what we did was we worked with Mara to try to come up with a plan that required the least amount of variance to the property. We're a little bit in a unique situation because we're on the corner lot, and of course I didn't appreciate that when I purchased it, but maybe I should have. But a corner lot brings different setback requirements than a non-corner lot. So this proposal is vastly different than what we'd originally thought we might be able to do, but it was the one that accommodated the things we wanted to do with the least amount of variance. So we were hopeful that, the relatively small amount of feet difference would be acceptable to the city. And then I guess the only other thing I'd say is that I think it actually improves the aesthetics of the house to some degree. The patio in the front will look nice from Jackson and Rock Hill. And so I don't think it does anything to, I mean, we're real close with our neighbors and we told them what we're going to do and they thought it was.
Is there a reason you guys didn't ask for some letters or in support from the neighbors?
It's listed as optional on our
Right,
application.
No, I'm just.
Yeah, it's not required.
Our next door neighbors and they said it was great and they didn't have any problem with it. So that's truthful.
No, it's your testimony.
You're under oath.
Yeah, I take that seriously.
Do you want to address the issues with the existing garage and why you feel that it's necessary to add a third garage space?
Well, there's no issues with the existing garage. The plan is that we're then gonna push the kitchen that you could actually see on that photo. So the kitchen is, I can't point to it, but it's on the picture that is up that I'm looking at. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So that's the kitchen. So the idea is that we're gonna go through that wall and we're gonna push the kitchen to have a nice expanded, newly modern kitchen that will go into the garage. And that will have the ability to park one car in the new single car garage, and then the other car will be out in the driveway. So that's the thinking.
But if I'm looking at this right, there is a 2-car garage. Or am I looking at this wrong?
Yeah, I will tell you that unless if you had, I don't even know if those little Kias, you could get 2 of those side by side in there. There, I have a Chevy Silverado and my wife has an SUV. There is no way we could get 2 cars in there.
Okay, so that was my question.
Yeah.
So the existing garage is too small for many modern vehicles. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and it wouldn't be. I don't think, except for 2 motorcycles, it wouldn't get 2 vehicles in there ever, even with older vehicles. So we're basically trading a 1-car garage for a 1-car garage, and then we're able to expand.
So the kitchen's the main issue.
No, the issue is they're adding a garage space.
They are adding.
Correct.
Really?
But
Okay.
it's the ultimate objective to get a bigger kitchen and that.
Mm-hmm. Now that's really not our.
No, we're not talking about a kitchen.
Right, we're talking about.
They don't need a variance for a kitchen.
Right.
For the issue, they
Okay.
need 2 cars, garage, which I don't blame them, and then you're gonna do an expansion on the kitchen, correct?
Okay, but
That's right.
All right, that's fine. with me.
okay. So, but let's talk about the hardship that you feel is on this, is for this particular lot that makes this difficult, that you need a variance. And that would be the corner lot and sort of the odd shaped. It's not even a rectangle, correct? Your lot.
It's an
It's a trapezoid of some sort, or
Hexagon.
I don't know what it is.
yeah. I'm
Did
not
I hear hexagon, sir?
Yeah.
I think we may have lost him.
I think so. Too.
Yeah, he's breaking up. Yeah.
You all are breaking up on the Zoom.
Hello.
Okay, we heard you say hello.
Pretty well testified.
I've heard as much as I need.
Okay. I think
He said as much as he wants.
right, that's true. Well, do we want to How does the board feel? Does the board have any more questions for the?
I had no more questions.
I have no more questions.
I have no more questions. If you can get anything across that you have any questions, we would appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll move into closed session.
Well, no,
Well-
we'll ask for other speakers, but
Right.
okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of docket 2395?
Oh, they wrote in the chat, no questions, we are good.
Okay.
Oh, good.
And we don't have anyone
No one else.
in opposition of 2395? Hearing none and seeing none, we'll close the public session and move to board discussion. Could we have
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance of 9 feet from the required 45 feet front yard setback for variance 2395.
do we have a second?
I would
Second.
second that.
Okay.
Several seconds.
Right, you think.
So does anyone have any comments?
No, I mean, I think we're dealing with an unusually shaped lot that has some topographic challenges, the side.
And I
yard
think
is-
that's the key. A very
Yeah.
big key is
The-
the topographic challenges
Because
in combination with the strange,
Right,
not
right,
strange,
right.
but unique setup of the house and the position of the house on that unique
Yeah,
lot. And they all
as-
add together.
as well as the side yard constraints that I think we're,
Okay.
and then I also just appreciate the willingness to explore alternatives
Yeah, I was
as
gonna-
well.
right,
I would agree.
I would agree.
I agree. We all agree with that.
Any
I understand.
any other comments before we call the question?
No.
All in favor of docket 2395, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Would you please poll the board?
Randy Sprague,
Aye.
BJ Propello,
All right.
John Burse,
I,
Debbie Sahlberg,
Aye.
and Tom Walsh, aye.
Thank you. Your variance has been approved. Please see city staff during regular business hours for your next steps. Tom, would you please read docket 2396 into the record?
I will. Docket 2396. A petition submitted by Matthew Mayer, Mayer Design Group on behalf of Stephen R. and Barbara B. Braddock for an application for variance from section 53.020 and 53.043 B.5 of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance to the definition of the yard rear to allow for the rear yard to be established parallel from the street where the lot frontage is the most rather than the least in order to construct additions to the existing house within the rear yard. The applicant is requesting a second variance of 12.58 from the minimum required 63.83 foot front yard north setback in order to construct a 2-story addition to the existing house. The proposed addition will be located 51.25 feet from the north front property line. The property is located at 405 Yorkshire Place within the A1 20,000 square foot residential district.
Thank you. Mr. Bontrager?
Can I just note, I apologize. I must have gotten interrupted while I was doing the PowerPoint slide. So just for the record, the slide has the wrong code section up at the top, but the correct code section was in the advertisement and in the paper and in the agenda. But I just wanted to point that out for the record.
Please read that in the record.
That's what I just did.
Oh.
I mean, we read that we read
It was
this.
actually read into the record correctly. It's just my PowerPoint
okay.
slide. It's just my PowerPoint slide.
Prior to presenting testimony, we would ask that exhibits 1 through 9 as listed there be included as part of the record.
Thank you.
Okay.
We call Mara Perry to testify. Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Mara Perry.
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 405 Yorkshire Place.
Yes, I am.
Is that located within city limits?
Yes, it is.
In which zoning district is it located?
In the A1 20,000 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request in docket number 2396?
So there are two requests. I'm going to go through the first one and then the second one. I'm going to then go through the code sections of each of those, and then I will individually go through the requests of each. So the first variance is requesting a variation to the definition of yard rear to allow for the rear yard to be established parallel from the street where the lot frontage is the most rather than the least, in order to construct additions to the existing house within the rear yard. And the second one is a second variance of 12.58 feet from the minimum required 63.83 foot front yard north setback in order to construct a two-story addition to the existing house. The proposed addition will be located 51.25 feet from the north front property line. Code sections. There are two code sections in this case. Section 53.020, which is our definition section. Our definitions don't have numbers assigned to them, so this is the definition of yard rear. The definition shall mean a space opposite the front yard extending across the rear of a lot between the structure setback line as required by the regulations of a particular zoning district and the rear lot line. On corner lots, the rear yard shall be considered as parallel to the street upon which the lots has the least dimension. On both corner lots and interior lots, the rear yard shall in all cases be at the opposite end of the lot from the front yard. The second code section that applies is 53.043B5. A dwelling that existed as of September 20th, 1956 may be enlarged provided the proposed addition does not extend into any required front yard setback a distance greater than the original dwelling structure.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
So yes, you will have the survey up on the slides right now. It's located at the corner of West Jackson Road and Yorkshire Place. We reoriented all of the drawings to match the way that the survey is oriented, but just for your reference, north is to your right. I've highlighted the house that's existing, which was built in 1923 on the survey. And then I'm going to use a series of, I'm going to focus first on the definition of yard rear. So when you are looking at a property, if you think about a typical block, typically the blocks that are not on a corner, that don't have that are interior lots, the narrower frontage is what you see at the street, and they go back deeper. So a lot of our lots are 50 by 150 or 50 by 200. In that case, the code requires that your rear yard is opposite to your front yard. When you're dealing with a corner property, they tried to put into the code that the orientation would be similar. Whichever front yard is narrower creates the ability that your lot will be deep enough to provide a better backyard that's opposite to the narrower frontage. That way, the larger frontage gives you more depth to your corner property. The problem comes when you have corner properties that are almost exactly the same in the configuration. So in this case, this particular lot has a rear yard that is established opposite from the narrower frontage. The narrower frontage is West Jackson, and the larger frontage is Yorkshire Place. If you look at the location of the existing house, you can see that that doesn't really line up to how the house was built in the 1920s. And it does create a rear yard that is technically the side yard of their house, and makes the side yard in their what is architecturally built as their rear. So if they did ask for the request, what it essentially does is it pretty much aligns the house with the configuration of how it was architecturally built. The front yard, the side yard, and the rear yard actually match up with how the house was technically built. So you will see that it now creates a rear yard space that is the rear of the house. The side yard is almost exactly in alignment with where the house was built. It does not make any changes to the front yard on West Jackson. It does not make any changes to the front yard setback on Yorkshire Place either. So that first variance is just focusing on asking for the variance to flip the interpretation of side yard and rear yard, essentially based on the definition in the zoning code.
So we're not talking about anything that's constructual. We're just talking about switching this up.
Switching it up because what it does is it gives them ability to build things without getting multiple variances. So right now, if you look at the house, if you work with the green area, they can build in this whole area over here, but they can't build off of their existing house. So if they wanted to do anything off their existing house in this area, they would need multiple variances. They would need both a side yard and a rear yard variance. If they built in this.
I'm just a little confused. Are we just dealing with the variance?
Well,
we're starting right now with just
Rear, side yard, rear.
I'm just dealing with variance number 1.
And then we're looking at another.
Then we're going to look at variance number 2. So variance number 1 is just to the interpretation of the definition.
Right.
Because if we create the definition interpretation and reverse it, they have the ability to build on this lot without having to get multiple variances. The lot itself is sloped in such a way, and there's photos.
Consider that in itself to be a hardship?
Yes, it's a considerable hardship because the way that the interpretation of the code is established, it creates buildable areas where there is a significant grade change. It also creates any area that you could build off of the house is now not in the buildable area
So
of
now
the existing house.
monetarily, they're going to have to come back for another variance and get what they're really looking for.
If we did not do this definition as a potential variance, anything that they would want to build off the back of the house essentially would need multiple variances.
Okay, that's fair.
And Mara, I want to just make a point that the address of a house or even the front of the house is not necessarily based on our interpretation of the front and the opposite rear. My house, for example, faces my long corner side. And so my rear yard is is off to the side from the front of the house.
Correct.
And it doesn't, but the addressing is completely separate from our front yard definition.
That is correct. So it can make it very difficult that in the 1920s, they built it in a particular orientation. And then in 1956, as the ordinance was put into place and made a definition to determine where the rear yard and side yard were, it's now flipped and reversed how this house was built in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think you've also said just the location of this house on this corner property, which is oddly shaped. This house is pushed back.
It's pushed back considerably on the lot.
Yeah, had these people originally had the house built closer to Yorkshire and West Jackson, probably wouldn't be talking about this tonight.
You are correct.
Right.
Any other questions on the first variance?
No.
Okay.
No.
So on to the second one. The second variance is related to, and again, no matter what happens with the first variance, it does not impact the second variance because the setback is the same no matter which of those two orientations happen with the rear yard. So the second request is asking for a variance to expand the side of the house that is on the northern area of the property. It's adding on to the existing house. Right now, the existing setback is based on the corner of the house that is currently located 63.83 feet, which is the green line.
Mm-hmm.
And I've highlighted in blue the addition that's being proposed. The red line is the proposed requested setback of 51.25 feet. And I'm going to identify, there are both existing and proposed elevations. I'm just going to briefly go through the various existing and proposed elevations. So you can see the existing up above and the proposed down below. And I tried to identify again the setback. Now, just as a reminder, the setback as viewed from Yorkshire Place is the largest one that you can see. But the amount of addition going into that area decreases as you get further towards the back of the house. So in this case, I've shown the required setback and the proposed. Same thing on the rear, required setback and proposed. Because of the slope of the land on this back side, there is an exposed area where they have a tuck under attached garage to the existing house. These other two elevations for the other two property areas, I put them in, but I think it's more important to focus on the other two that are most applicable in terms of this.
And this front yard setback from Yorkshire is based on the location of the house to the west, correct?
No, this one is based on the existing front corner of the house.
The existing front corner of the house. Okay, so so we didn't have to draw lines in this case. Okay,
we didn't. We used the existing front corner of the house, and then I did.
Oh, right, because of the code section. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
And so I did also put all of the. You have a packet with a number of photos. I put all of the photos on the slides in case you needed to reference any of them. Okay. But there's a diagram that shows where the different photos were taken. But you'll see in these photos here the front of the house that faces Yorkshire. Mm-hmm. In these photos here, you'll see a little bit better in the photo 6 that the grade changes significantly with the backyard being up on top of a retaining wall. Same thing here, additional photos of the backyard being up on top of a retaining wall and the existing tuck under the garage, and some additional photos of the rear yard. Any additional questions for the second variance?
No more.
Anyone else
Done here.
have any questions? Okay.
No.
All right. Who's here in favor of we'll move on to the petitioner. Who's here in favor of docket 2390?
I just have one question. Do we have to approve these variances in 2 motions, or do we need?
Yes.
2?
Yes, correct.
Who's here for docket 2396? Please come to the podium. Please state your name and then raise your right hand.
My name is Matt Mayer.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
So let's talk first on variance number 1.
Okay. You've been sworn in.
I swore to him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that.
As Mara said, and I think a applicable description is the architectural layout. You have your front door, which is in the front yard, and your rear door would be in the rear yard. And tongue in cheek, it was even referenced that in the presentation because that's how we think. Our biggest in the lot is such that grade is a big issue. The photographs identify a large retaining wall, which is going to limit the amount of backyard, if you will. And that space we've tried to enhance and buffer the neighbors with some landscaping, which now allows them, if the first variance is granted, to enhance their kitchen.
Do you have any endorsements from the neighbors?
Yes, we have.
Finish his
Yeah,
testimony before being interrupted.
All right. Yeah, let's let him finish.
So we have a kitchen renovation and then kind of a drop zone with a pantry, but then even more so would be an outdoor patio, covered porch with a sitting area and fireplace, which will also give some depth to the house. It's a Tudor style home, and the photographs are gonna, there's next to no overhang. It's a very handsome house, very striking, very monument, and we would like to give that rear yard something more than just a sun patio to it, and a larger functioning kitchen. So that kind of talks about variance 1, because as Mara had indicated, variance 2 talks more of the hardship of, and the photographs will identify it, and the proportion of the existing garage, which is called out in association with the proposed garage. Which we're only identifying a 13-foot wide garage. Typically in your mind's eye, I think in terms of a parking space being 10 by 20. So we have a little bit more room for doors to open, bicycles and whatnot. And we would access through the existing garage through what's currently a couple of windows at the Jackson side of the property. It was kind of identified as a 2-story addition. This would be a second, a tuck under garage that's functional with modern vehicles now, with a 1-story open porch associated with, and I don't know that we really got into, if I need to get into the.
There is a picture of
I just put the elevation up.
that. Okay.
So you can see where the lower photograph, so grade would come up on, it wouldn't be a 2-story. I don't know your description of a 2-story addition, but it's a subgrade garage with a 1-story addition porch, which is even with the existing first floor, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then you have a 2nd story, which we're not touching any of that 2nd story. So I don't know if that helps kind of clarify it quickly. I don't want to, carry on.
The only question I have for you are 2. What is your hardship for variance 1 and what's your hardship for variance 2? Just explain it.
Sure. So variance 1, as identified, what I call DD2, if we could back up to that slide, there's 2 outlines, and I don't know if you have the packet in front of you that I'm referring to.
Yes, we do.
I do, but I like it up.
So DD2, mine's yellow, where Mara's is green.
It's green, yeah.
And then red is what we're asking for, and mine is green. And it's pretty apparent that it's kind of, so that's, the hardship is there's no room for an addition, and where that would happen, it would have to almost be a cantilever over the driveway.
Well, and I also think that part of the hardship is the placement of the existing house.
Yeah.
Because it was placed like that southern limit was a side yard rather than a rear yard.
Exactly. So that would be the hardship for variance number 1. And then variance number 2 hardship would be, here again, the photograph would identify it better of that tuck under garage where it is. It's, and Dr. Braddock's could kind of fill you in a little bit more, but it's a steep driveway.
Yeah.
Do you talk about weather? Do you talk, you still have to park go upstairs, but yet your vehicles are out of the weather. I don't know that that's a hardship, but the garage that's there now, they can't park in. Is that a hardship? I guess you could fit a golf cart.
Why can't they park?
It's just the size.
It's too small.
Dimensionally, it's impossible.
So you had a garage.
I guess you could pull in, but you couldn't get out of the car.
When was this house?
Which is always a problem.
It was built in 26, I believe. 26.
This is also was built in 2000.
Sorry, 23.
Or
1923.
all right.
I think you could say the hardship too is related to the house as it was built originally on this lot and the steep sharpness of the hill.
Topography and
especially on the
yeah,
Jackson side.
absolutely.
Okay, I'm not real sure that's that steep.
Thus the one
What's the level grade there?
photograph number 11 identifies, and photograph 10, that retaining wall holding up the second rear yard.
Because that doesn't look that steep. I mean, I get it. Not going.
Photograph 3 kind of stands at the corner of Yorkshire and Jackson. That gives you a better idea of topography.
I think.
And the photograph 2, you can see the series of steps leading up from the street to the front door.
Well, if you look at the house next door and the retaining wall, you realize there's quite a drop down to the street there.
Yeah.
We have a grade. You're the architect, right?
So yes, I'm assisting your residents.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but, I'm not sure that the difference between the elevation at West Jackson and the elevation at the addition is really part of the issue. I mean, I think it's just, they're making a small addition, and part of that addition is to provide for a tuck under garage. Correct?
Correct. With a covered porch at the first floor looking out towards the corner. Yeah.
Does anyone have any additional questions for the architect at this time? Is there anyone else here in favor of docket 2396 who would like to speak? Is there anyone opposed to docket 2396? Okay, if we don't have any questions for the architect, are we ready to move to closed session?
So move.
Okay. All right. As we discussed, we're going to need 2 motions. So I would like a motion to approve the first variance of docket 2396.
Well, I will make that motion.
A second?
To approve the variance of the definition of yard rear pertaining to docket 2396.
Second.
Okay, so anyone want to start off with a comment?
Well,
I don't see any hardship.
Okay.
I don't see where all of this is at. However, I could be convinced.
Okay, Tom? Do you want to...
Well, I think it's been pointed out in testimony by the city that this house sits, let's just start at the beginning, at a corner lot. And the house is pushed back. And by changing that definition allows them to do some things to enhance their property that they wouldn't otherwise without several variances, if they chose to do all that.
Well, and
Makes sense?
Right, and I would also point out that when this house was built, there was no rule about which was the front yard, and so consequently, the using the requested variance would put almost the entire house in the buildable area, whereas using the current definition, at least a third of it is out of the buildable area. And so not only can they not enhance it, but if there was some sort of disaster, they might have trouble rebuilding.
I think that's a great observation.
It's a good observation.
I'm sorry.
What?
Go first. I apologize.
I was just agreeing, Deb. I think that's a great observation and at the core of what the hardship is here.
To me, that's an if-come situation that, if it happened, but that's not how you roll on.
Right, but the fact is that the house was built in the envelope with that would be determined by if the variance was granted versus the ordinance that was established, 40 years after the house was built.
I mean, I can't see that it's a tremendous issue. I think it is a hardship in that the house is I don't want to say misplaced on the lot, but it's certainly placed oddly on the lot, and that to me is creating a hardship. And it's very simple to rectify a great deal of that by merely facing the thing, you're taking the same house and calling it a different direction. I think it solves more problems than one can imagine. I think it's a reasonable request and one that I think we should grant.
Okay. And any other comments on the motion before the board to approve the definition of yard rear of docket 2396? Okay, we'll call for the question. Once again, this is just for the first variance. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Tom, would you please poll the board?
Randy Sprague.
Aye.
BJ Papello.
Aye.
John Burse.
Aye.
Debbie Sahlberg.
Aye.
Tom Walls. Aye.
Okay, so we've approved the variance to the definition of the yard rear as requested. Now could we have a motion to approve the second variance request for docket 2396?
I make a motion.
Clarify what the second variance is, please.
Well, Tom will do that in the motion.
I make a motion that we approve the variance of 12.58 feet from the minimum required 63.83 foot front yard north setback for docket item 2396.
I'll second that.
Okay. Anyone want to start the discussion?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the hardship. I will let you convince me, but if anybody wants to say something, otherwise I'm iffy on it.
I would think part of the hardship, once again, is we have a house that was built 63.83 feet from the street right away, which is nearly half the depth of the house where the house is, depth of the lot where the house is located. Normally, this house was located almost as far as it could possibly be from both Yorkshire Place and West Jackson when it was originally built.
If I could intervene, it really doesn't matter as to what we're talking about unless it creates a hardship, and I don't see that hardship.
Well, I think the hardship is the location
I'm asking
of the house.
Telling them
right.
And I'd also add the slope of the lot. I think adds to that hardship.
Sorry, Tom.
No, go ahead.
No, finish.
No, I'm done.
I'm inclined to support it, but certainly the north elevation, really the way this house addresses the corner is pretty distinctive and pretty special. And I would hope that our colleagues in the ARB can work with the owner and the applicant to create a design that rises to the occasion of that corner. I think it's encouraging. We actually saw a proposal last year or maybe 2 years ago for the same parcel, and I think it's really encouraging to see a porch there, but those great window openings are really distinctive. And while I know architecture is not the purview of this board, I would encourage an addition there that really rises to the occasion and honors that elevation, those elevations.
I think when one thinks of hardships too, if I understand trying to put a garage on this house, it's not a simple thing. And this is not really a 2-story addition. This is sort of I don't know what it is. And that's, the slope is significant there. You can't move a retaining wall. You can't do anything with that. The house is shoved way back in the back of a lot. There's a tremendous amount of land out in what is now front of the house, but there's you can't build it there. So to me, the very location of the house on the lot, plus the topography that you have to deal with to try to bring this house into this century, this is that's a significant hardship, and I think it's one that I could see approving.
Any other comments before we call the question?
Oh, yeah. No.
So the motion, this is the second variance from the front yard setback.
Right.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Tom, would you please pull the board?
Randy Sprague.
Aye.
BJ Papillo.
Aye.
John Burse.
Aye.
Debbie Sahlberg.
Aye.
And Tom Walsh votes aye.
Your variances have been approved. Please see city staff during regular business hours for your next steps. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Yeah.
That looks to be a hard project.
Tom, would you please read
Beautiful.
docket 2397 into the record?
Docket 2397, a petition submitted by Michael Blaze Architects on behalf of Chris and Kristen Height for an application for variance from sections 53.058J of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 3.2 feet from the minimum required 10-foot east side yard setback in order to add a half-story to an existing detached garage located 6.8 feet from the east side lot line at the subject property. The property is located at 417 West Swan Avenue within the A2 15,000 square foot residence district.
Thank you. Mr. Bontrager?
Yes, before we begin testimony, I would like exhibits 1 through 9 to be included in the record for the purposes of this hearing.
Thank you.
We would call Mara Perry to testify. Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Mara Perry.
Are you employed in the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development.
What are your duties in that position?
To administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 417 West Swan Avenue?
Yes, I am.
Is that located within the city limits?
Yes, it is.
In which zoning district?
The A2 15,000 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request in docket number 2397?
The applicant is requesting a variance of 3.2 feet from the minimum required 10-foot east side yard setback in order to add a half story to an existing detached garage located 6.8 feet from the east side lot line at the subject property.
Which municipal code sections apply to this request?
53.058J. Any detached accessory building with a gross floor area exceeding 672 square feet or with a building height as defined in section 53.02 of the zoning code exceeding 12 feet shall comply with the minimum side yard setback requirements of the district as applied to the primary structure.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Yes. So this property that's located off of West Swan is an interior lot. The house was built, I forgot to put the house year. The garage, which is the one that we're talking about, was built in 1995. The house is older, but we're focusing on the garage. I'm going to walk through the accessory structure setbacks. So on this particular property, the accessory structure setback, if you were going to add a half story to the garage, would be 10 foot from the side yard because it needs to meet the primary structure setbacks. It remains at 5 foot from the rear and at least 10 feet minimum from the primary structure. I've identified in a green line the approximate location of those required setbacks and where the current garage sits. The current garage was built in 1995, already exceeding the 672 square feet, but it did not at that time it was not required that it come into compliance with the side yard setback of the zoning district. We used to have a accessory structure setback. It was only 3 feet in the code. And then over the years, they changed that if you added more square footage or put a half story above, that you had to meet that side yard setback. The rear yard setback remained the same. So this is a legal non-conforming structure because of when it was built in terms of the time frame before the code change. Right. The requested side yard setback of the 6.8 feet is to keep the existing wall of that garage in the exact same location. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer to show the approximate 6.8 feet for the existing wall of the garage, and then the approximate location for the 10-foot setback. This is the architectural site plan identifying the proposed location. I tried to highlight in blue the additional half story that's going on top. They are trying to focus everything so that they have the least amount of variances that would have been required. They're keeping and remaining meeting the 5-foot setback at the rear. They're bringing the stairs into the buildable area so that they can access the half story while still meeting that part of the zoning code. The problem is that no matter what you do with an accessory structure, once you structurally alter an accessory structure, everything needs to come into compliance. There is, I'm sorry, what?
What's out of compliance?
If they're going to, well, it's already out of compliance that it doesn't meet the 10-foot side setback for the accessory structure. That would happen, like if they did anything to any wall of this garage, it would have to come into compliance, not just putting in a half story, anything within this structure.
Sure. That's the subject of the variance request.
Yeah.
That is correct. There is also in your packets proposed floor plan.
Ask you a question. Are we just asking for forgiveness on this?
No, it's not. Again, it's a legal non-conforming structure that was built before the current codes. What they're asking is to expand the garage, and in expanding the garage, they need to have the variance for the existing wall of the garage.
Thank you.
So there is in your packet a set of proposed floor plans, which identify the half story up above that, again, you can see the half story itself is meeting the setback, but because it's structurally altering the existing structure, they do need to come into compliance.
And it also meets our requirements and limitations for a half story.
You are correct.
Above a garage.
Yes, they are limiting it to the 50% of the first floor of the garage. It also will come into compliance. They made sure to address all potential variances and were able to limit it down to just the one and meet everything else in the code. This is one of the photos. There is a series of photos, but this is one of the photos so you can see the existing garage next to the proposed elevation. So the overall height of the roof is going to increase, but the rest of the lower portion of the garage will remain in the same location. There are a series of other photos. I wanted to make sure they were available in case you need to make any reference to them, but probably this is one of the key ones to understand the red line being what is being asked for and the approximate green line being where the code would require them to be if they built it all new today.
Anyone have any questions for Mara before we?
Yeah, I haven't looked through the entire packet. Do we have any letters in support?
We do not.
All right.
And no letters in opposition.
And no letters in opposition.
Who's here tonight for docket 2397?
He gets nailed these days, right?
Michael Blaze.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Mara always does an excellent job of telling you the whole story. She kind of gave you all the reasons we're trying to why this is an issue. The one thing that hasn't been discussed is we did look at options for relocating the garage, actually tearing it down and putting it somewhere else on the lot. The big issue we have, and this is one of our hardships, is topography. So if you look at the swimming pool on the lot, that is basically at basement level. So they have a walkout basement. If you see the stairs on that site plan that come down the side, it goes all the way down to basement level. So to move it over, we'd be building more retaining walls. It's just gets very complicated, and it really doesn't work. Not only because of the topography, but because of its proximity to the house. Because it's so nicely lined up with the driveway now, you can pull directly into the garage. I think a larger car on the right side works well, and a smaller car on the left side if you were to get two cars in. So our hardships are the topography and the existing location of the house on the lot that restricts our access to that garage.
All right, so we're not gonna have any crazy pool parties.
Well, I don't think Mr. Blaze, I'm not going to ask Mr. Blaze to speak to that, to make any guarantees.
We have the homeowner is on Zoom right now. He's actually out of town, but he is listening. And so I won't say a word.
Okay. My understanding is you're really just going to, leave the east wall of the garage in place and bump it up and then do some construction on the west side, correct?
Correct. The entire garage, except for its roof, will remain.
Oh, so the footprint of the garage, except for the stairs and the bathroom,
correct,
are not going to change. Okay.
It also appears, just ironically, that the addition, second story, if the ordinance didn't read the way it did, wouldn't require a variance. It looks like you're within your buildable area for the second story. Now it's sort of irrelevant in a sense.
Yeah, once we touch it, and like Mauro said, anything we do to this.
Sometimes you get people trying to go out and all that. You're
right.
Going, the second story comes.
Now, just from my information, I don't know that this is really pertinent. Will the architectural elevations of this garage have to go before the ARB?
Yeah, so we're expecting it to.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Blaze?
No.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
No, we're not ready for that yet. Quite, BJ. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of docket 2397?
Yep. Hold on just a moment. I'm going to move him over to panelist.
Oh, all right.
And I believe this is Chris Height, the homeowner.
It is.
Okay, Mr. Height, would you please state your name and raise your right hand?
Hi, I'm Chris Height.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead. Do you have anything to add to Mr. Blaze or your own presentation?
No, I'm in Ohio. I wish I could be there with you. Sorry, I can't. I think Mr. Blaze covered it. If we slid it over, we'd have a too shallow of a turn, and he's laid it out better than I ever could. I'd like to thank Mauro. Mauro, I wish I could be there to see you. I appreciate what you do for our town and happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Height?
How's Ohio State going to do this year?
No. I hope badly. I'm a Mizzou fan. I'm on a business trip in Ohio.
No, I have no questions.
I don't know.
Anyone else?
No questions here.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of docket 2397? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to docket 2397? Hearing none and seeing none, we'll close this for public session and move into board discussion. Could we have a motion to approve docket 2397 so we could start discussion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Well, does anyone want to make?
Sure, I would say it doesn't seem like this making a foot stamp on anything. It seems like it's in the exact same spot and they're just adding a little bit. I think they should get it. So that's
well.
I think they did explore other options, and in the backyard, he I stuck my nose back there real quick. It is lower on one side, would create some difficulties. And they're on the addition is going to not change the existing garage except for the upward second floor addition.
And even if they moved it 3 foot over, they still would do this garage at the same height.
Yeah.
So.
Any other comments?
No. Right here.
All in favor of docket 2397, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Tom?
Randy Sprague.
Aye.
BJ Propello.
Aye.
John Burse.
Aye.
Debbie Stahlberg.
Aye.
Tom Walsh. Aye.
Your variance has been approved. Please see city staff during regular business hours for your next steps. Thank you very much. It's nice to see you again, Mike.
Oh.
Is there any other business before the board?
No other business before the board.
Our next meeting will be October 12th. Tom's already indicated he will be traveling out of Zoom reach.
Zoom reach, yeah.
So we'll make sure to get.
Maybe also
Okay.
out of range. I may be in California.
Okay. Well, so here's the good thing. We have 3 alternates
Okay.
now. One of our alternates was sitting here watching, our newest alternate. So I will get with them ASAP because we have 4 docket
And
items again.
the date is
The 12th.
the 12th. I'll let you know immediately.
Okay. And then would you prefer to go back to 7? Do you want to, we did 6:30 these last 2.
I really like this 6:30.
I kind of like it.
I remember in the olden days when I was on the board before, the meeting started at 7:30.
Yes.
And when
So-
were those days?
Where were those?
2005.
Well, I was going to say it was still that when I started here.
Yeah.
The sun was closer then.
No, I think it was guys wanted to get home and have dinner after work and then come to, I'm 6:30 is fine. 6:30 is fine with me. I just, would like to know, and then, I noticed that the
Sign
marquee
is
was-
incorrect.
Uh-huh.
Yes, the sign was put up.
I'd recommend keeping it at 6:30.
I actually like the 6:30 time, but I'm happy to go with whatever the majority.
too.
Right.
I'm more.
I don't want to go back to 7.
Do you want to go ahead and close?
I'd like, we have a motion to
adjourn.
close the
So
meeting.
moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Everybody have a nice rest of September.